Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Jack and today I've got another video for you sharing my experiences of going through the civil service interview process. Today I'm going to be talking to you about delivering at pace. This is a behaviour that a few of you have requested, so I thought I'd chuck together a video about it. I'm going to talk about what I think the behaviour is all about. I've put in a few examples of questions that I can think of, and as always, please remember that this is my experience and is not to be considered official guidance. If you find this video helpful, please let me know down in the comments below and consider subscribing to my channel. Otherwise, let's just get straight into the video. Okay, so when I think about delivering at pace, I think about juggling multiple priorities and how I manage my time when given an unexpected deadline. This deadline doesn't have to be, I need this piece of work in 30 minutes ASAP, although it can be. But what about a project where the deadline's maybe been brought forward by a couple of weeks? So maybe a project that was going to take a month now needs to be done in a few weeks. I think the main thing you want to show the interview panel is your approach to these situations and how you stay calm and your thought process for prioritizing the task that you have. It's important to show that despite delivering this work at pace, the quality of the work and output doesn't suffer as a consequence. It's also really important to show that you still follow the policies and procedures even though the work is at pace. One of the things that I think people forget when delivering at pace is that it's really important to show that you communicate throughout the project or throughout the piece of work. Communicating every couple of hours if you've got a really tight deadline is key because it keeps all stakeholders in the loop. If you're an analyst like myself, it's really important to let the interview panel know that you're on top of GDPR and data regulations as you're still working at pace. So if you've watched any of my other videos by now, you should all be familiar with strength questions and what they are. If you're not, I would highly recommend you go back and watch some of my other videos, and I'll link that up in the card and down below in the description. From my experience, generally the interview tends to start with strength questions. So in this video, I've included an example of what I think a strength question could be for delivering at pace. If you look through the guidance and the dictionary for strength questions that I've also linked down below, you'll see that there are quite a few strengths that feed into the delivering at pace behavior. I won't list them all in this video, but I would highly recommend you go through and just read some of them to get yourself familiar. As I said, I've come up with a few questions and examples of things that I think you could be asked throughout the video. But what I would really encourage you to do is to pause after I've asked this question, think about how you would answer it, and then I'll take you through my approach and what things I think you should be thinking of. I think a classic example of a strength question for delivering at pace could be, do you enjoy working to a deadline? Okay, so I hope you pause the video after that and you've come up with how you would answer this question. As you'll know from my other videos, the key with strength questions is not just to say yes, but to say yes and then explain why and how you think this is a strength of yours. I would probably start with, yes, I do enjoy working to deadlines and I generally feel like I thrive when I'm under pressure. I enjoy being accountable and having to plan in detail aspects of project or the piece of work, and this keeps me accountable to that deadline. My current role sees me doing this quite regularly, and then I would maybe list some examples of that, but don't go into too much detail. After that, I would then say, and in the past, in previous roles, I've had to work to deadlines by doing this project and that piece of work. By doing this way and answering yes, saying why, and then going into detail about your previous roles and experiences, it's a nice way of being able to talk for 3 minutes. Just make sure not to give fully detailed star examples and just briefly touch on where you've worked to deadlines in the past. I said in a previous video that I think the situational type behavior questions are probably the most difficult because you almost get put on the spot and you kind of have to think about your mindset and your approach to the situation. Okay, the question is, imagine that you've been given an urgent deadline that is needed for close of play today, and this deadline is non-negotiable. You also have projects that need to be finished by the end of the week, and this will affect your ability to complete these. How would you approach this situation? Okay, I hope you paused the video and I hope you gathered your thoughts as to how you would answer this question. My first thought is, okay, I have these other projects and these deadlines are going to be compromised. I already know that my day today is now going to be looking at the urgent deadline. So what can I do regarding my other projects that have a deadline for later on in that week? For example, is there someone on my team who can pick up my other work? Could I delegate this task to someone that I maybe manage? The next thing I would do is I would let all stakeholders know, unfortunately, something has come up that is urgent and requires my attention. I would obviously empathize with this situation and explain this may affect the deadline, but don't worry, as soon as I'm done with this, my priority will be the piece of work that we're both involved in. I think if you are empathetic and explain your situation, most people are generally understanding. However, it is really, really important to maintain open communication and talk with stakeholders involved regularly. However, it is important to be firm in your approach if they ask you to maybe prioritize their work over the urgent deadline. You need to be resilient and explain that unfortunately this is your priority for the next day or so. However, after that you will be back on their piece of work. Once I've done all that, I will then work on the urgent piece of work and try and do this as efficiently as possible, utilizing maybe some past work that has been done previously, or maybe I could contact someone who's done something similar in the past. While I'm working on this urgent piece of work, whoever it is for, I will be communicating with them openly and giving them progress updates probably every couple of hours, because there's no point leaving it for 8 to 9 hours and then saying, ooh, there's been a problem. If there are problems, it's best to let people know as soon as possible. A lot of the time in these situations, there will be something that comes up, part of the work that you can't do in a day, or maybe something isn't available. And it's just important to communicate that as soon as you possibly can. Finally, as we're delivering at pace, it is important to get someone to sense check what you've done. As an analyst, we call this QA or quality assurance. But even if you send in some slides or maybe a document, get someone to read over it, to spell check, to proofread, because when we're delivering at pace, often this is when mistakes kind of creep into the situation. Okay, the final question we're going to talk about for delivering at pace is a typical competency style interview question. So this is when you would use the STAR approach and give an example or tell them about a time when you did this. An example of a question for delivering at pace that I came up with is as follows. Tell me about a time when you've had to work to a strict deadline and ensured quality standards remained high. Okay, I hope you paused the video and I hope you've all come up with some examples. If you have and you pause, let me know down in the comments below. Remember, when we're delivering things at pace, it's important that the quality of the output doesn't suffer as a consequence. So remember a minute ago, we talked about other priorities, etc. Mention that in your answer and how you prioritize things and how you maybe delegated other pieces of work and other projects in the interim while you were working on this. If you've only got a couple of hours to do something, a lot of the time taking a few minutes to plan it before you do it is really an efficient way of minimizing time wasted. This ensures that the quality of the output remains high because you do something in the most efficient way you possibly can, which then gives you the time to check for any mistakes you may have made, and it also gives you time to ask someone on your team to check your work. If I was going to answer this question, I would probably talk about a time when I've had a request for an urgent piece of data or an urgent piece of analysis. One thing that you can include in this answer is lessons learned through the process. For instance, as an analyst, I'm always thinking, how can I automate this so that if it comes up again, it just is done in a click of a button? Maybe for you, it could be something along the lines of storing documents in an accessible way next time, so that everyone knows where things are and it minimizes time. It's all about trying to make this process as efficient as possible. By highlighting this in the interview, it shows that you're constantly trying to improve and constantly trying to be more efficient. So that is all for this video, everyone. I tried to give detailed examples and I hope you paused throughout and it got you thinking about things that you can talk about throughout your interviews. As always, if you did like this video, I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the channel down below. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a great day. Take care and I'll see you soon.